Yo, what's going on, guys? So what I'm going to be doing right now is covering my trades from today and also going over shorts on YM and also going over CL. So yeah, let's get into it. So to get the overall perspective what this week should do, we understand that, okay, what did we do the previous week, right? We can see that we're reversing from here, right? So we take out this weekly low, right? We close back inside the range. And that is overall where we expect this weekly candle to expand, right? So if we mark out the weekly open, we can see that if we go to the daily time frame, we can see that we basically open low first, right? We can also see that if you look on ES specifically, we can see we have a SMT between Thursday and Friday from last week, right? So this again is speaking where if price is gonna make SMT here and price is already failing through us of this high, then likely Monday is just gonna expand and then this becomes the target, right? So that was my overall idea here, and when this target's hit, we want to see, okay, boom, what is price doing? We can see it's expanding through this high. So that is generally speaking where we can expect it to catch up, right? And that's what we see right here. This high, the 5th September around 9. Here we can see 5th around 9, so this is same high, right? And we can see this would be the previous week's high. And you see how we're catching up to that right now in YM. So that is overall where we can get the overall upside bias on all assets when this high fails to basically reverse price, right? So now we'll go over the overall setup here. So let's get into it. So we can go to the 4-hour time frame first, and we can start here. So basically what we see right here is if we go and look, we can see that 6 a.m. or 2 a.m. candle. We can see that we're overall keeping within this range, right? And then we can see that YM runs out the low of day. Let's remove all of this. We can see that YM runs out low of day. So this becomes that irrelevant for our low. So if 2M expands into a low, we're also in this gap. Then this where you want to see some sort of reversal. What do we have as targets? We have these relative equal highs up here. And that is where we see the reversal after. But that now we understand that we take out this low for our relevant swing. And that forms the SMT, which would also be what? It would be a SMT fill, where one asset fails for value gap, where the other one fails to do so. And then we can also mark out this, like we were talking about. We have this failure to reverse. So that is where I'm looking for. Okay, if 2M candle reverses, this candle also support expansion. So that is where I wait for 6 a.m. to open. And that is what we see right here. We 6 a.m. opens. Let's mark it 6 a.m. open here, right? We see that we expand away. So if we go to the hourly time frame, what do we look for here now? We look for some sort of, fractal model, swing formation. So at this point, we have this right here where we form the SMT. We have a C2 candle, so we let the 5 a.m. candle, so the last hour of this 4-hour candle, if this reverses price, then what should the next, hourly candle open do? It should expand, right? Because that's also, now we're pairing the last hour of the 2 a.m. candle reverses price, creating the C2. That is where this new 6 a.m. candle should expand. And what do we want to respect? We want to respect 50% of this previous hourly candle, right? So that is where we can go down to the 5-minute, right? We can see that we are forming this reversal, like we said. We formed the change in state delivery, and all I'm waiting for now is for the next opposing candle to be made. And that is what we do right here, right? We can see if we play back price here real quick. If we get the indicator up, we can see right here that what do we have as targets? We have London high. We manipulated within the 5 a.m. candle. And now the need for our open should expand price. And that's what we see. We open low first. We're keeping within this T spot, right? Which is also referred as the upper quadrant of this previous hourly candle range. And that is where you can take this entry or you can take this continuation entry, right? Because now this low is protected. What are we hitting anything significant? Yes, we're hitting this fair value gap, right? So this becomes a relevant target or relevant continuation. It shouldn't come deeper, right? And that is where we get the continuation, and then we start expanding after that, right? Now overall, I took this entry. Now the problem I had here was that I had a super bad R here, it was super big. And overall we can see that ES took out this high first. We formed the SMT against me. Well, we actually didn't. We made equal highs, but I was looking at the micro contracts, which we actually did take it out. So technically this is not even valid just because we want to focus on specifically the mini contracts. So I could have definitely held this, which is an unfortunate event here. But when we make SMT right with NQ, more so retracing, and then we expand again, right? And now we're gonna go over some continuation signature. What is demanded within this range on the coordinate asset to trade a continuation? So now we understand that YM, we can see that at this point we want to look at the 30-minute candle. So look at this. Look how, if you go to the 30. So generally speaking, when we have these new physical price, so you can see here how we basically see that we have this free candle expansion. This is generally speaking where we want that new physical price. So what we see right here is the same candle retraces back into this gap, making a new C2 candle. So if you look, 7 a.m., 6:30, that's where we create this SMT. So we have 7 a.m., 6:30. So that is where we create this SMT here, right? And we also understand that if we make a new C2 within this gap, that this would be a what? This would be a SMT fill, right? So if you mark out SMT fill, right? So if we create SMT right here, then we understand that YM is going to be closing a bearish candle, right? So that's where we're making that PSP right here. So if we mark that out, this candle closes bullish, whereas this YM candle closes bearish, right? So that's that PSP. And here's where we actually form the two-stage PSP, where one asset basically runs out the previous 30-minute low. Why does this happen? Because it's going to be opening close to it, because this closed bearish. And that is where we create this two-stage PSP, kind of like two-stage SMT, 30-minute low, previous 30-minute high. So if you look at the times here overall, if you go to the 5, see how this candle expanded, and then we're opening super close to this low, right? We're opening right at it. So that is why we can also manipulate the previous 30-minute low at the same time, right? And that's where we start getting that expansion higher right here on NQ. So if we go back here, so right here, here's where we get that expansion away, and that is where we can try the continuation. And then after that, we understand that like I could have, like it's so unfortunate because I could have 100% held this, where we hit this high, right? We induce people, and then we manipulate, and then I call this on stream as well, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I could have definitely held this. I had my, I was break even down here, right? And price didn't come all the way deep this far down if we're gonna come higher. And I even said this myself. I was like, I can definitely hold this, but yeah, it's just an unfortunate event. But now we kind of get like how the reversal formed. You know, what should a 6am candle do from this point when this C2 was formed? And then we also have this where ES hits a high, we retrace, and then when YM is it's the weakest asset, so it retraces more. And then the new 30-minute opens right at the previous 30-minute low, and that's where we create the two-stage PSP, where this candle closes bearish and K closes bullish. And then we get that expansion. And after this expansion, we can see that what do we have above price? Do we have any relevant targets? We have all-time high up here. So a second entry that is valid here is you basically see that, okay, let's get the indicator up. So you see how we expand higher, right? And this is where what are we getting? We're getting that retracement signature, and now we're getting that kind of like expansion, and then we're getting that method expansion, right? We're getting that kind of like V-shaped signature here. We close above here, so that would be the intra-candle change in sell delivery. And we already formed the reversal down here. So that is where we're holding this gap, and that is where price should respect. And then we have relative equality, we have dead candle high, and that is where you can take this entry right here and target this high. This is a 100% valid entry, but this didn't play out unfortunately. But yeah, that's like the overall trade idea here. And also something to note here as well is if you look at this closure, look at this hourly closure. See how this 7 a.m. candle closes bearish, NQ 7 a.m. candle closes bullish, and that's where we also form this SMT. So this should be another two-stage PSP. So first we form the two-stage PSP here, and then at the new hourly as well, we close this bearish, whereas 8 a.m. candle here also closes bearish, but the overall higher time frame candle, the hourly closed bullish after they took out this high. So that is where also we form this two-stage PSP, and then we expand. So we already have like a set low framed here after, you know, so we already have a set low when we expand away with the driver. So that is where when 9:30 open, this is where I just want an expansion higher. But best case scenario here is we just wait for 9:30 open, but we can see we just run out these lows instantly. So I took this trade as well, but on ES, which was a small loss for me. But yeah, it's all good, no worries at all. But yeah, now we can go over the short idea. So now we understand all the whole idea behind why we longed here. So now we can go over the short setup, right? So I didn't take the short setup just because I'm personally not willing to trade away from this high, right? I'm not willing at all to trade away from this high. But we can see here that overall YM hits this relevant weekly high. We can see that this, the 4 hour, we can see that this candle closes bearish. So we basically expand to high, we react and expand lower. So when we form this reversal candle and we also form this PSP, which we can see that, look at how we close. We close this bullish, 6 AM candle closes bullish, and here 6 AM candle closes bearish. So overall, we're favoring YM. And what do we have right below price? We have previous day's low, right? So that is where this becomes a valid target. And overall, since NQ's previous low is all the way down here, we can look for around 50%. And we see that we come right into 50%. What's in that 50% zone? It's around, it's this fair value gap, right? So that is where we see we hold this gap and we come higher. So that's the overall ID here. So let's go down here. So we have this C2 candle. So if the 6 AM candle reverses, what can we see within this wick? We can see that we're making this opposing candle. So this just confirms the idea more, where basically 9 AM close below the opposing candle. Right, we can also see that NQ, ES is not closing below anything. Really, overall, not great structure here. And also something to note as well is how ES closed. So you see how ES closed above. So 6 AM closed above this 2 AM candle, whereas NQ, like we said, failed. It closed back inside the range. So that is generally speaking, if this candle is going to be closing a bullish expansion candle, then generally speaking, this is the high we want for price to manipulate, right? Because we're going to be opening pretty close to it overall, right? But and this high would also be what? It would be the 830 candle high. So this becomes a great reversal point where we can create SMT. You see how close we got to it? We just made an internal SMT here, which is not great overall. It lacks narrative to trade lower. But we can still go over the overall structure here. So we close below here, we can see that 10 AM candle opens high first, right? And then we can see that I'm not really looking to trade within here. There's nothing real of significance here. We can see that around 10 AM we are manipulating this high. So this could be something where you just wait for that opposing candle at around 10, so you get in around right here. Now to me, still lacks narrative, just because NK has targets above price and stuff like that. And we also have ES coming super close to this high. So this is generally speaking where I would want SMT on this high, because when we're so close, this high kind of like becomes irrelevant to me. And we also have like, we understand the data candle high is usually a big liquidity pool that price goes for. Now what I want you to focus on here is, this is like, so I talk a lot about how assets become decoupled for them to resync, right? So what do we see right here? We see that we expand within the 10 AM candle lower, ES at 10 AM, more so consolidating, NQ, same principle, we're coming higher. So that is where YM is way weaker, where NQ is not following at all, like we're failing to close below opposing candle, it's just keeping within a range. We're manipulating irrelevant highs in a sense. And that is overall what we see right here, right? Let me see exactly, I think it's 9, 10, yeah. So we have SMT right here, internal, we form this order block. So overall looking really, really great on YM, where we can, I was still expecting higher prices, but when we start reacting within 6 AM candle, close below opposing candles, you see how 9 AM close below, 10 AM candle open high first, internal SMT, because pretty one side of price should do lower. But what I want you to focus is this candle. So 11 AM candle expands into low, and then we can see we're forming this bullish candle right here. Let's play back price a little bit. So we expand into low, this candle closes bullish. And if you look overall how we are forming within this range, you can see how we're below discount, whereas NQ at this point is in deep premium. So if you look, mark out the high, low to the high, we can see how price is in super deep premium. Same principle on ES, whereas YM is below discount, right? So if we mark out this again, right, we can see we're in super deep discount here overall, below lows. So that is overall, when this happens, this is basically the asset resync. So we understand for assets to start, catching up or changing strength, where the lagging assets become weaker to catch up to YM. That is where this could happen. This is a perfect example of that, where this candle, 11 AM candle closes bullish. If you look at 11 AM candle here, we're closes bearish. And then we can also see that the 12 AM candle is expanding lower, whereas YM is trading higher, manipulating this previous hourly high, which was the PSP candle. So that's where we make the two-stage PSP. This would also be that SMT fill. So if 12 AM candle manipulates with a PSP on the previous candle, 11 AM candle, that is where we want the next candle to expand lower from that point, because YM is switching strength, and that is a form of asset resync. So basically, YM consolidates while NQ expands to catch up to some relevant low. And that is what we see right here. We expand lower. What becomes a relevant target for NQ? Just because we don't have enough time within the day, it's super late overall. That is where we can see, like, okay, what becomes a target? It becomes this gap. But generally speaking, if we're at like key drivers or times, that is where we can actually expect this candle to catch up to this low overall when YM is consolidating. And the reason YM consolidates is because if we just kind of like, if we think about this logically, if assets just continue to expand and like they have to do this stuff, and that is why PSP is so important, right? Because this shows strength switch for it to catch up, and that is where we trade the lagging assets really, really easily overall, right? But yeah, that's like now we went over the longs, the shorts, like this overall makes sense. We have this for reversal candle, hourly order block, 10 AM open high first, SMT, lagging assets catches up with two-stage PSP, SMT fill, right? So that's the overall idea there. And now what we can do is we can go over the CL trade. So let's go over that. CL today was pretty hard overall. I'm going to explain the overall idea behind it. So we can remove all of this for now. So if you go to the daily time frame, what I was looking for is for price to reverse of this high. But we can see that we pretty much failed to do so every single day. You can see that we came higher, came lower, came higher, came lower, came higher. So it's kind of like grinding higher, even though we're hitting like previous day's highs and shit, and it's just failing overall, right? So that's where we can zoom down and look at this picture right here. So if you look right here, we can see that we want to look at relevant lows, right? So we can see that if you look at this 1400 candle low, we can mark that out here. So we have this candle here, so we're making a higher high. So we can see that 2 AM candle expands into low on HO. Let's remove all this too. We can see that the 2 AM candle, or not 2 AM candle, okay, so let's go to CL first. RB, pretty sure, yeah. So let's do this. So we see that the 14 candle low, we can see that 2 AM expands into that low, right? So this candle doesn't support expansion. So that is generally speaking where we want to trade the next 6 AM candle higher, because now we form this established low. These are relevant lows, so this becomes the only point of continuation, right? Or reversal. Because why? Because there's nothing else relevant within this range. It's only this relevant swing. So that is when 2 AM expands into low. That is where we can trade 6 AM candle higher, 100%. Now at first, we can see that we actually failed to expand at first, right? But that was for HO. So if you look at this low, if you compare here, this would be the previous day's low, where CL's previous day's low is all the way down here, and RB is all the way down here. So that is why we didn't reverse at first. Well, we did technically, but like 6 AM had to open low first, manipulate on HO, because we already hit targets on CL, right? So, or on RB. So that means that we don't need to come lower within the 6 AM candle. We can, this low can remain open because we already manipulated it prior to the new 4-hour open, whereas HO did not. It had a relevant target below. Like we technically hit this 1400, but it becomes irrelevant when it's a failure swing to this relevant previous low, right? So that is where we form this 2C SMT, where we first make SMT with the 2 AM candle low, and now we're forming a 2C SMT with this new 4-hour open, right? So that is where we can focus specifically on RB, right? Because we can see we're making this SMT here, making a higher high, so we're making that 2-stage SMT, right? And then we can play back price just to not be hindsight here. So that this is where it will be looking something like this right here, where we basically have this. So we first have the first SMT. We can see that 6 AM candle opens. we run out the low on HO. I'm pretty sure here. Okay, not yet actually. Let me see. When do we do it? Okay, here's where we do it. Well, it's a bit weird here though. So the 4-hour print is pretty weird here, so we'll just gonna redo this shit. So basically, when do we form this SMT is the question here. So 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Okay, that's where we form the SMT. 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Okay, so we actually don't form an SMT at first here. It was with CL. So you see how we're making this lower low at first. So RB going from the weaker, and then CL basically runs out this 5 a.m. low, and this will be the previous 4-hour low. So that is where we make the SMT, which is showing us that CL is the overall weaker asset compared to RB because it's making that higher high at the open. So that is where we have this C2 candle. This is like perfect, right? Because now we're forming a C2 candle with SMT. So that is where you can expect that 7 a.m. candle to expand higher. So your entry could have looked something like this, right? Where you either take this entry, right? You put first order block here, right? You're trading away from the two-check current correlation, which is valid, and then you can take this continuation order block, something like this, right? And we can see this is like right at the 7 a.m. open, so you can take a position entry for 7 a.m. to expand, put your stop loss this low, and then target like relevant highs. So that would be like we have this relative equal highs. So this would be, I'm pretty sure this is pre-stage high as well. Let me see. So this is a valid trade right here, and even if you took this trade here as well, like you would have gotten stopped anyway, right? So both scenarios in this case, you would have gotten stopped both times, which is just unfortunate, right? But we do then expand into these highs. So the overall narrative was correct, but yeah, we just fucked around here. Now after we take out this previous day's high that we were talking about, this is like where now we have to actually focus here. Why did this happen, right? Why did we come back higher, and why can we expect a strength switch for CL to start catching up, right? So that is what Gary traded. So we see right here that we basically expand into high and we expand away. That is that V-shaped signature, which is a reverse signature from a relevant high, and at this point we have SMT. Now what we see here is that in these up and coming candles, we can see we manipulate this low, right? This low, let me see exactly where it was. Yeah, so if you look right here, you see how one asset, I'm pretty sure, for a low. Okay, let's see where exactly that is, just to make sure. So it'll be this low right here. So we see that we manipulate this previous for our low, whereas CL does not, right? We're making this higher high. And you see how at first we're making that lower low, where RB was stronger, and that's the reason why we expanded into this high. And after expanding into that previous day's high, we can see that we're expanding lower, and then we're expanding higher again. So this was some sort of 1030 news, I'm pretty sure, Trump or something. We're expanding into low, expanding to that previous for our low, right? And that is showing that RB is becoming the weaker because the previous for our low here is failing to manipulate. So we make this higher high right here. I'm pretty sure we have some sort of PSP as well. So that is where we're from this, right? It happens all the time. Look at this. So one asset, which is RB, is the strongest. It expands into high. It expands lower with like Trump news. And then we make this manipulation of this previous for our low, which is going to be the 6 a.m. candle low. And since RB manipulated, it's showing overall weakness compared to CL. And then we can also look at the closure where this candle closes bearish, whereas CL closes bullish. So that's where we have the two-stage current correlation showing overall strength compared to RB, right? So that is where we have this PSP right here. So we have the two-stage PSP, strength switch, and that is where you can just look at the 3 minute. You can be like, okay, we formed the reversal, right? And then from this reversal, we can, let me get the fractal indicator so it looks better. And then we can see we form the reversal for SMT, PSP, close above this opposing candle, retracement. So we understand if you're getting the V-shaped reversal, the fair value gap created should hold. So that is where you can start getting in around the fair value gap, put your stop below this low, and where you're going to target, you're obviously going to target this previous day high and expect it to catch up with RB, right? So that is what we see. You take your entry here, and then it starts delivering higher. We open low first, right? Respecting that fair value gap, and then we expand higher, and that's where we catch up to this high. So you see how RB take out the high right here, expand lower, expand higher, that V-shaped signature from low, from a 4-hour low, CL strength switch, PSP, everything. All right. So overall, super great idea overall here. Definitely needs like you need a lot of experience to actually catch this, but then you can see we continue higher. Like we can't really anticipate us to come this high, but the overall trade that day was this. So now went over CL, RB, HO, GC. There was nothing on GC really. I was looking at this right here, but we kind of more so shopped around. Like you just look at the day here, you just fucked around all day. So nothing on GC for today at all. Super bad. And I mean, it's pretty anticipatable. Just look what we did in the previous days here. So many days of expansion. It's like insane, right? So something where you might shop around for a little bit here, or we might on CPI tomorrow. It might just be building up liquidity for it to expand like crazy as well. There's different scenarios here overall, but yeah, that's the overall trade outlook. I'm pretty sure we did everything now. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, thank you for watching.